How do you break the action economy in Pathfinder 2nd edition? What's that all about? And if I break it, do I have to buy it? No, that doesn't make the slightest bit of sense. Why would you even ask a question like that? You can't break action economy in that sense. It's not a physical... Why are you asking... Why do you always... This is the Dominomicon, authored and hosted by me, Dominic. The Dominomicon is dedicated to all nerdy things, with my current obsession being the TTRPG Pathfinder 2nd edition. In this video chapter, I'm taking a look at the action economy in Pathfinder 2e and giving you ideas on how to break it. As everyone gets 3 actions plus a reaction per turn in PF2e, this means that actions directly equate to power, thus reducing enemy actions or increasing your actions enhances your power, and this video is a list focusing on the latter. Please consider subscribing if you want to see more Pathfinder content like this, and of course consider sharing this video with a friend if you find it helpful, and thanks for watching and checking out the channel. So let's get quickened for an extra action to start the music. Okay, so while this is going to be a relatively simple video, it will require some system knowledge. This is simply going to be a list of ways that you can give yourself more actions or do things to break the action economy in inverted commas. I'm going to start with the low complexity basic stuff and build upwards. Of course, some of the ideas I'm going to throw out there are going to be very build specific. As ever, this list is going to be based on my experience with PF2e, meaning this is all opinion based, and some of these ideas will be better than the others. I think number 5 in particular is probably the best one. And throughout this list, consider the following combinations. I've said it multiple times before, and I will happily say it again. One of the best ways to break PF2e is to combine abilities together. Combine debuffs, combine actions, and combine strategies. Doing all these things together will more than likely annoy your GM, which probably means you're doing something right. As we're going through this list, I'm going to be giving you examples of how you can add all of these ideas together to create a ridiculous amount of actions in a singular turn. As White Room scenarios don't tend to work all that well in PF2e, this isn't going to be definitive. I'm not going to be giving you a way to get 15 actions every single turn or something crazy. And at the end, we're going to have a brief runners-up list where I'm going to go over some of the crazier but a little bit more build-specific action and economy-breaking abilities you can get. That'll do. Let's dive in. As we are starting with low complexity and building to high, let's start with low level abilities that are literally action economy breaking. Many actions in PF2e have the Flourish trait, which means you can only do them once per turn. Generally speaking, that's because many of these actions are action compression abilities, meaning that they literally combine actions together for less action costs. Some of these are 1 action, some of them are 2 actions, and of course you got to consider which ones are going to be best for each individual situation. Generally speaking, I'd say the 2 action ones don't tend to be quite as good as the 1 action flourish abilities, as they tend to be a bit more situational than the single action ones. Compare sudden charge to hunted shot, for example. And not all the flourish abilities are action compression. Some of them do things like reduce multiple attack penalties, such as slam down, which allows you to do an attack and a trip without increasing your multiple attack penalty until afterwards. However, I'm not going to be talking about those ones. And I have no intention of going over every single flourish action, because that would probably be a 30-minute video on its own, but I will list off some of my favorite ones. Flurry of blows for the monk is just crazy good, especially if you get stunning blows with it. Yes, you have to be a monk or take it as a dedication, etc., but there's still quite a lot you can do with it. And the aforementioned hunted shot is really good, but I don't think it's quite as good as flurry of blows, because you do have to hunt prey first as the ranger. If you're a shield user, defensive advance is just incredibly good. Doctor's visitation for the medic is crazy amazing. A lot of people don't realize that you can use this on yourself, which means you get to stride and then battle medicine yourself for 1 action. Getting to move and heal yourself for a single action is kind of insane. Quick reversal for the fighter is crazy good fun. If you're flanked by at least 2 enemies, you get to make 2 strikes for 1 action, and they don't have map. It's such a good ability. It's one of the reasons I love fighters so much. Suffice to say, definitely keep an eye out for some of these abilities and consider how you can use them within one of your builds. If you see the flourish trait on one of the feats that you're looking at, chances are it's a good one, because it's probably going to have action compression. But let's add a little bit of complexity. Being Quickened is probably the easiest action economy breaking ability once you reach the levels where it's available, which is usually around level 5-ish. There are multiple ways to gain Quickened, such as a potion of quickness at level 8, and of course the 3rd rank spell Haste. And when heightened to 7th, you're able to target up to 6 creatures, by the way, which is redunculous. Regardless of how you accomplish this, you are given 1 extra action at the beginning of your turn. That means that if you're Quickened on your turn, it generally doesn't apply unless it specifies that it does, until until the beginning of your next turn. But you can use this action only to stride or strike. That means you cannot step with it, so be careful of those reactions. You also cannot fly or crawl or stand with it. It's very specifically strike or stride, and you're not able to combine it with things that give you strikes as part of another action. It's specifically a singular stride or a singular strike. Generally speaking, having potentially 4 strikes in a round is not going to be super duper useful with the multiple attack penalty existing, but being quickened can still be quite useful. It's good for getting into a better position, as you can just stride for free, which gives you your 2 action abilities still available as well as a strike. So if you're the sort of character that can cast spells and attack, you could move into position, cast a save-based spell, so no map, and then do a strike all in one turn, which is pretty awesome stuff. And there's plenty of other ways to use and abuse being quickened. It's one of the simplest ways to break the action economy. It's probably one of the weaker ones, but hey, it's still an extra action at the end of the day, and there's nothing wrong with that. And again, consider combining quickened with flourish actions to give yourself an effective 5 actions per turn. Let's briefly turn away from just the 3 actions you have during your turn. If we are talking about breaking the action economy, we have to look specifically beyond those 3 actions, because a standard round of combat isn't just those actions, it's the actions of everyone else at the table, and the best way to squeeze more juice out of the action economy is to steal time during the GM's turn, aka reactions. By default, everyone gets 1 reaction per round. A well-placed reactive strike from a fighter or a retributive strike from a champion is already great action economy because you're dealing damage or preventing it outside of your normal turn, but you can push this so much further. Certain classes get to break this fundamental rule of 1 reaction per round. The Guardian is the absolute king of this, because from level 7 onwards, they just get an extra reaction specifically for Guardian abilities. At level 10, a fighter can pick up tactical reflexes, which gives them an entirely separate extra reaction at the start of the turn that can only be used for reactive strikes. And the champion gets a feat called Divine Reflexes, giving them a free extra reaction for the specific defensive abilities. And if you want to look at the absolute pinnacle of insanity when it comes to action economy reactions nonsense, take a look at the fighter's level 20 class feat Boundless Reprisals. This gives you a reaction at the start of every single enemy's turn, and if you're surrounded by 4 enemies and they all try to cast a spell or walk away from you, you get to smack every single one of them. You're effectively taking a 7 action round just by standing there and waiting for them to mess up. When you combine a class that naturally generates extra reactions with the quickened condition and flourish actions, you stop playing by the 3 action limit entirely. Next up is something I'm really sad to have to include in this list. Sadly, there's no way around this. If I'm going to talk about breaking the action economy, I need to mention the #1 action economy breaking class in this system, the Summoner, my nemesis. For whatever it's worth, I do give Summoner a lot of flack. I personally don't think it's justifiable to have to share HP with something else on the battlefield, and if you're both included in an area of effect ability, you have to roll twice and take the lower result. Also, Summoners don't summon, they manifest, fight me. But still, the fact of the matter is, from level 1 as a Summoner, you get effectively 4 actions every turn straight away. The thing here is that you do have to share those actions with your Eidolon. One of my other criticisms for this class is actually just the wording of the Act Together ability. Like, you only have to do a web search to find a bunch of Reddit threads with people asking how this ability works, because it's just terribly worded. Here's how I explain it to my players. Every turn, you gain 4 actions that have to be split up between the Summoner and your Eidolon however you like, but one entity cannot take all 4 actions. Lastly, at least one of those 4 actions must be a standalone single action, such as strike or stride, for example. That's it. With that in mind, you do indeed get 4 actions. The biggest downside here is, of course, as I've said, you now effectively have 2 bodies on the battlefield, and you even have to share your multiple attack penalty. Still, it does get better, because as you level up the Summoner, you can take 2 more tandem actions, and the main and most important one here, because this one is full-on action compression, is tandem movement, which as a single action allows you and your Eidolon to move together. This is effectively 5 actions per turn, because you could both tandem movement for 1 action, so both of you are moving, which should be 2 actions, but it's 1, then you could cast a spell, which is usually going to be 2 actions, and then your Eidolon could also strike at the end of that, which is another action, which, yeah, is an effective total of 5 actions. Then, as ever, consider combining the tactics I already spoke of. Most Summoner subclasses can get the haste spell and cast it on themselves or their Eidolon, so using Quickened, as well as tandem movement and and act together, that is an effective 6 actions per turn. And aside from needing to play as the summoner, there's no real like super in-depth build nonsense needed here. It's pretty easy. So that's like basically double your actions, and as haste lasts for a whole minute, that's like the whole fight, and you can do that twice per day. And as you level up, of course, you can start to grab a few more dedications to get more spells if you want multiple haste actions, etc. It's honestly kind of crazy being able to give yourself potentially 6 actions every single combat. For all the criticism that this class, in my opinion, rightly deserves, it's a pretty surefire and easy way to give yourself extra actions. And as I already mentioned reactions, at level 6 you can grab Eidolon's Opportunity, which is basically just reactive strike for your Eidolon. It's a nice little bonus action outside of your turn. Right, onto the last and weirdly complex way to break the action economy, and also my personal favorite. Having a companion is certainly one of the more complex things you can do in this system, though getting one is actually rather simple. At level 2, you can pick up the Beastmaster dedication so long as you have training in nature, which is not all that hard to get, let's be honest, it's literally just 1 skill training. As soon as you get this dedication, you immediately unlock an animal companion, which you get to command for 1 action, which gives them 2 actions. So effectively, straight away, as soon as you get an animal companion, you can break the action economy by spending 1 action to gain 2. Literally action economy breaking. Now, druids and rangers can actually take animal companions at level 1 as well, and the commander can grab it with commander's companion at level 1. Also, there's honestly quite a few different ways to gain animal companions these days, but I specifically mentioned Beastmaster just because anyone can grab that so long as they have training in nature. Animal companions obviously aren't going to be super duper powerful. They don't have the stats that a standard martial is going to have, but they can body block, they can provide flanking, and they do get an attack as well. Some of them have some really powerful support abilities on top of all that. Some of these classes I mentioned at level 4 can gain the mature animal companion, though some of these are going to require level 6 instead. But the point here is that once you get this, your animal companion gets 1 action per turn to strike or stride, even if you don't command it. And so that actually is 1 extra action per turn for free. Well done, you now have effectively 4 actions per turn without having to do anything. To make this even more interesting is if you pick an animal companion that has the mount ability. Now, I don't want to go into all of the complexities of mounted combat because that's its entirely own section. It's not that complicated, but still. Suffice to say, you can hop aboard your mount, and once it has its independent action, it can move and take you along with it when it strides, meaning that you are now moving for free once every turn. And that's actually better than it sounds, because mounts tend to have pretty solid speed. If you can take a horse, for example, they can go 40 feet, and some of the high-level mounts can even fly with you on their backs. Usually you have to take extra feats and stuff for this, but still, you can play a melee martial on the back of a creature and it can stride every turn for free with you on its back. No haste needed, no annoying summoner Eidolon nonsense needed. You now practically have 1 free movement action every single turn. And now imagine that you are playing as a summoner and you take Beastmaster at level 2 and you get its independent action at level 4, and now you can move for free and act together on top of all that, and then imagine casting haste on yourself too. Using all of the ideas I've mentioned in combination, you really can utterly destroy PF2E's action economy. Yes, you'd need a very specific build to have all of this work, but the point here is that doubling your actions and possibly beyond is indeed possible, and that's just one possible idea available to you in PF2E. There's plenty of other ways to blow up the action economy. I feel like I should also mention familiars at this point. If you give them the independent familiar ability, that gives them 1 action every turn that they can do without being commanded, and familiars are able to do untrained skill actions such as demoralize. The stats are going to be kind of rubbish for it, but still, it's kind of fun to be able to do that. And there's a few other ways to get a few extra actions using a familiar. If you grab the familiar ability Valet, your familiar could pass you items of light bulk that could be particularly useful for alchemists or those sorts of builds. Partner in crime is pretty good as well if you need to use deception or thievery regularly. If you use this with independent, then that can be cool as well. Manual dexterity is good as well, as your familiar can interact for you, and if you combine that with independent, it could potentially close doors on enemies, etc. for free, which could be fun. So there are a few ways to get your familiar to boost your action economy, but it's definitely more build specific and rather restricted. With some character build playing, I managed to make a silly, idiotic thing. Once you get to around level 10, I believe a summoner with Beastmaster and Witch dedications with the independent and skilled familiar abilities, with intimidation being the trained skill, can do around 7 actions per turn when hasted, so long as your companion is mature. If you add pack movement to that list, which is technically 4 4 actions for 2, is it's 2 strides and 2 strikes, and it's a flourish action plus tandem movement. Yeah, this gets a little bit bonkers. Oh, and if you pick Witch as your main class and grab the Patron's Puppet as your initial hex spell, then for a focus point every turn, you can command your familiar for free. Lovely stuff. Right, onto the runners up, which is definitely going to be a lot more build specific, but they can still be really fun. I think the simplest and easiest one for spellcasters out there is the Cackle feat for Witch. You don't need to be a witch, you can grab the dedication to take this feat, and it's level 1, so you can get it rather early, and it's just a free action that costs a focus point that allows you to sustain. So it's a free sustain, which is pretty cool. The Liturgist, which is one of these subclasses for the Animus, gets an ability that allows them to sustain an apparition spell for free when they step, leap, or tumble through. Leap can actually go relatively far. I believe it's up to 15 feet, which means you can effectively move 15 feet and sustain for free, which is kind of cool. Add to that Effortless Concentration, which you get at level 16 with some of the spellcaster classes, Bard, Druid, Sorcerer, Summoner, Witch, and Wizard. It's basically exactly the same as the Witch's Cackle, except it just doesn't cost a focus point. It's just a free sustain, and it can be for any spell. With Cackle and Effortless Concentration, that means you can sustain 2 spells for free, which is pretty fun. And it's especially fun if you consider summoning something in first and then getting to sustain it for free, and then maybe doing it again the next turn, and then getting to Cackle and sustain the next one. It could be pretty crazy. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Captain dedication, which is relatively new. It gives you a follower as a companion, though this is a humanoid and not an animal, so that means they can do stuff like interact or crawl or whatever, unlike regular animal companions. Sadly, you cannot mount them. I'm just going to stay quiet so there's no dodgy suggestions for what I just said. I definitely have to mention the Commander class here as well, because they are very much an action economy breaking class because they get to command their allies. It usually costs your allies a reaction to follow the command, but the commander can give back a reaction every turn so long as you used it on one of their tactics, which is pretty cool. Demoralizing Charge is probably a little bit overpowered in my opinion, as it kind of makes the class boring because all you ever want to do once you get Demoralizing Charge is Demoralizing Charge, because it's just crazy good, especially if you get Drilled Reflexes as well. At level 10, you can give back 2 reactions, so you can Demoralizing Charge, effectively get 2 of your allies to Stride, Strike for free, and then the enemy needs to make a will save or become frightened. Crazy powerful. Outside of all of this stuff though, I think Whirlwind Strike is probably my favorite out of all of them. This allows you to make a melee strike against every enemy within your reach, and map does not increase until after you've made all of these attacks. If you have reach, you could be making like 8 attacks per turn or something absolutely ridiculous. It does cost 3 actions, but if you're hasted, you could move and then do that, or if you're on the back of a mountain you're hasted, it could move you in, you could then do this, and then I guess demoralize or something if you're a crazy person. Oh, and I have to mention Chain Reaction for the Unexpected Sharpshooter. This is probably in the list of my top 5 abilities available in this system. I'm not going to go all that much into it, it's just unbelievably hilarious, and it's a crazy action compression BS all at once. Just pause the video and read the description, because it's honestly one of the dumbest and therefore best things in PF2E. This is probably just the tip of the iceberg for some of the crazy BS action economy breaking builds that you can do, but it's kind of fun to think about all the potential ways you can destroy this system, much to the dismay of your GM. Trust me on that. And I think that's going to do it for this video chapter. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing, sharing with a friend, and adding a comment about some of your favorite crazy action economy breaking nonsense. I'm sure you're not going to get blacklisted by any GMs by sharing any of these things, right? Yeah, no, you'll be fine, probably. As ever, I'd like to send a shout out to my artist, Leandro Notado. There's a link in the description to his art if you want something beautiful commissioned. And I'd like to thank my archivists and members: Max Magnus 20019, Ozzy Smith, Nikolai Milenkovic, Carl Travis, Bentfair, Apteryx13, and patrons and archivists Clash, Q, and Patrick O'Donoghue. Thanks, guys, so much. But for now, this is Dominic of the Dermy Nimi Numi Nimi Nomicon, wishing you a fond farewell, and until next time, goodbye.